Postel Blond.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. I've got a bottle of this stuff, Postel Blond Abbey beer, and this I think I got from Beers of Europe, and it was quite cheap, so I thought why not. And this first time I've had a beer from this lot, Postel, but it is named after an abbey. The abbey exists. It used to brew beer, not anymore. This has actually gone to a contract brewer now called Alken-Maes, I think they're called, and they brew quite a lot of beer. But there's a massive, massive alarm bell with that. They also brew Foster's and they also brew Kronenbourg 1664. Two absolutely dog shit beers. Now, I've reviewed the Foster's on my channel. If you want to have a look at that, be my guest. It's not great, to be honest. I haven't reviewed Kronenbourg 1664. I don't know whether I want to review Kronenbourg 1664. If I am going to review it, it'll have to be out of a can, because they do it in green bottles round the corner, and I am not drinking green bottles from round there. They can F off, because I've had enough of their skunky beers. But this is brewed in the same place where they brew. I didn't even know you could get Foster's in. Why the fuck would you drink Foster's in Belgium? They brew it in Belgium. Why would you drink Foster's in Belgium? I really don't know. I think they would need their head examined. Certainly nobody in my company would be drinking Foster's. I just wouldn't allow it. Of course I would. I'm not that much of a tyrant, but honestly they will get jogs abuse if they did. But they brew it in the same factory. Might as well be a factory. They brew it in the same brewery that they do this stuff. And as I say, it's contract brewed. The Abbey actually has got quite a long history. It's been going since 1040 AD, and the brewery was based in there. And it stopped, I think it was in the 90s, I could be wrong, but I think it was around the 90s when they stopped brewing that, and they contracted it out. So this lot are, I'd imagine, leasing this under licence possibly. I don't know. You can't really call, they're calling it a beer abbey, but it's not a true abbey beer, because it's never seen the inside of it. It's about as abbey-esque as Leffe. They're also renowned for quite a few other beers as well. Something my stomach's rumbling today. Must be after all that work I was doing today. Absolutely nothing. Oh, actually, I was putting up shelves today. But the brewery, let's get back to the brewery. They actually do quite a few well-known abbey beers. Even they do some other beers, but the abbey beers they do Grimbergen. Heard of them? I've reviewed some of their stuff on the channel. I didn't think much of that. Affligem. They do that as well. I really didn't think much of that either. So, the alarm bells with this are ringing in my ear holes. The brewery, yeah, as I say, it's a contract brewer. They do a beer called, I think it's a lambic. Or a creek, I'm not sure. I think it's a creek that they do, and it's called Sudden Death. Or in French, it's called Mort Subite. And it's named after a cafe, but fancy naming a beer Sudden Death. Fucking hell. They should call Foster's Sudden Death or something by Brewdog. Anyway, let's reverse out of that cul-de-sac. Let's investigate this beer. Right, Postel is a 330ml bottle. It is 7%. It is a blonde, and 7% is a little bit high for a blonde, in my opinion, but it's not the first time I've seen it, and I imagine it certainly won't be the last time. No brew sheet, unfortunately. Alken-Maes, they go back to the 1800s. They're the contract brewer. Unfortunately, you know, as I was saying with the Foster's and with the Kronenberg, they're part of Heineken. So that would explain a lot. And as I say, there's alarm bells ringing. There's no brew sheet on there. I don't know whether Heineken would ever put one up there or not, but the signs aren't good. That's all I can say, really. It's got a load of stuff in Flemish on the back. I cannot read a word of it. And it's just going on about water, malt de orge, syrup de glucose. Wonder what that is. Glucose, syrup and sugar. Christ, this isn't looking good at all. Fuck my old boots. Right, let's get it open. Let's see how bad this is. I really shouldn't do that. I really shouldn't condemn a beer before I've tasted it, but there are certain signs you can look for, and them certain signs are rarely wrong. Don't get me wrong, they can be, but rarely they're wrong. Certainly a Heineken beer with glucose syrup as a cap, glucose syrup, and I think Postel was something to do with religious. It's a monk or something like that, I think. I don't know. That's just speculation on my part. Yeah, the fact it's brewed by Heineken, it's got sugar and glucose syrup in it. That really doesn't bode well. But the sign, as I say, the signs, they're normally there, and you know, when you see them signs, you can sort of guess. Now this glass is filthy, and for once that isn't my fault, because my stepdaughter cleaned that glass last night, and it is a fucking disgrace. Look at that, disgusting. I'm drinking it out of a Leffe glass. It's another pseudo Abbey beer from AB InBev. I think quite fitting. What are we getting on the nose? Oh, cheap malt. That's what I'm getting. It almost smelt like a lager there. A macro brewed lager. No real clove or spice or anything like that, which I'd be sort of expecting from a blonde. Not getting much at all. It smells macro brewed and cheap. There it is in the glass. It's a sort of a very light amber colour. Tons of carbonation. Look at the bottom of that glass. That is going for it. Head is 1.5 finger, foamy white head. It smells like a cheap macro brewed lager. That's what it smells like to me. With a very faint whiff of banana. I guess it's coming through now. But it's really insipid. Oh well. Wish me luck. Sweet. Very sweet. That is the first thing that hits me. Do you know what would be interesting? And I'm going to do it now because I think the Leffe has more flavour to it. And I've got a bottle of Leffe in the fridge. Give me 2 minutes and I'll set this up. Right, here's my bottle of Leffe. Now I'm going to compare these two because I didn't intend for this to be a comparison video, but I think this is going to be, well, put it this way, I think they're fairly evenly matched because they're both brewed by a macro brewer. And I want to see which is the best one. Now Leffe is popular. Now I'm drinking out of a Leffe glass, but I'm pouring the Leffe into a St Bernardus glass. Confused? You will be. Right, now one thing I do know straight away is that the head differs on this. It's crystal clear. The fucking glass is clearer, I'll tell you that. But there's the comparison there. This actually looks, to me, this Postel looks lighter, in my opinion. You may be seeing something different on the camera, but in this light here I'm getting slightly darker on the Leffe. So what I was getting there was just the sweetness. It was just a ton of sweetness, not much banana. It was very subdued. Let me just dive in again. Yeah, there's an underlying sort of cheap malt type flavour, sort of almost like a biscuit type malt. The Leffe, here we go. The Leffe seems more full-bodied, in my opinion. There's more body to it. This is a bit weak and watery, but flavour-wise, there isn't much in it, to be honest. That Postel, if you can imagine this, it actually tastes cheaper. It's thinner bodied and there's more malt than anything else. And coming from Heineken, that takes some doing, because Leffe's not bad, don't get me wrong. Leffe's, this is the only decent one they do, in my opinion. The Blonde. I think the others really aren't good. They do I think it's a fruit beer, or a rouge they call it. That is absolutely disgusting. That is just so full of sugar, it's not funny. The Brune, I didn't think much of at all, just too artificial. They did a Christmas beer, which again was just so artificial tasting. I really didn't like that. And they did one that was actually quite good. It was quite a complex beer, and I think it was the Ritual 9. That wasn't bad from Leffe. It was quite interesting, it was quite complex, and it didn't taste as cheap as the other beers. And I'll give that quite a high mark actually, because it was quite complex. But this stuff, this is really poor compared to Leffe. Now Leffe Blonde, as I say, it's just okay. You know, they sell it round the corner, in the shop round the corner, Skunk Central I call it. And yeah, it's reasonable, put it that way. But this stuff, this is a step down. I honestly thought Leffe was the cheapest, and I wouldn't say nastiest type tasting blonde, but just a very, very boring average blonde. But Christ almighty, this is actually poor. It's just got too much of a sickly sweet flavour to it that I don't like. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't much better, but it just feels like there's more body to it. And yeah, this Postel is like a watered down Leffe, if you can imagine that, with less of the flavour. I'm really not impressed with that. I would not recommend this at all. So what's the verdict on Postel? Well, no, I don't think it's any good at all. That is a really, I wouldn't say nasty tasting, but a very, very cheap tasting beer. It's the sort of thing I'd expect from a contract brewed supermarket beer, and it is contract brewed, so I have to take that into account. And it's owned by Heineken as well. Now I don't want to knock the big brewers, that shouldn't put you off. It's all about the beer, as I always say, and if beer tastes good, it doesn't matter who makes it. That's my opinion anyway. But the fact that this is made by Heineken, it doesn't taste great. It's brewed in the same brewery that they do Kronenbourg 1664 and the Foster's. Yeah, this is in keeping with that. If you can imagine being used to, say, something like, I don't know, Leffe Blond, Paulaner or something like that, and comparing it to Foster's, you know, or you're going to try a lager that's brewed by Paulana, but it's brewed under contract. I know this. I'm making up scenarios in my head that would never happen, but if you can imagine a brewery that stopped brewing, I would like to put money on it. This is the point I'm trying to make. When they were brewing this in the Abbey, I bet it didn't taste like this. I'd imagine that the contract brewer, again, you know, as contract brewers always do, they've got to make a profit. This was quite cheap, and yeah, they've cut corners on it. They've got big discounts on, you know, not I wouldn't say big discounts, but they've got discounts on bulk buying, and I'd imagine that a lot of the stuff they use for their contract brewed Abbey beer goes into this. They may use a different strain of yeast or something, I don't know, but Jesus, this isn't good. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. It's just, there is absolutely no point in drinking this when there's other Belgian beers around. And if there's nothing else, I'd say drink it, and you'll probably feel very disappointed for drinking it, almost violated, if you know what I mean. But it ain't great. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I'm not going to recommend it. It's cheap on Beers of Europe. Don't bother. Just spend a little bit more money and get an half decent one. There's loads of good ones out there. Go for the Castile stuff. The Castile stuff is quite reasonably priced, but it tastes really good. Just to let you know, and just before I go, I stopped the video and I thought, what will I do with this? And I thought, I'll blend it. I'll just throw this, what's left of the Leffe, I'll throw it into there. And I started drinking it, and Christ almighty, that really is bad. It is just sickly sweet. It really isn't good. So I definitely do not recommend blending these two beers together, Leffe and Postel. You're going to end up with a really sweet and nasty attempt at a Belgian blonde. And there you go. And remember, I'm drinking this shit, so you don't have to.